what does Dak have to do in this game to get back into the MVP discussion?
300.
Is it possible? You think for two-part question. Is it possible for him to get back into the MVP discussion? And if it is, what does he have to do?
I think he's got to have one or two big plays. On top of that, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, no wins. And I think that puts him healthily back in the conversation.
If he does that and he's not back in the conversation, it's fucked up.
I think for me, it's a 2-part. So you have to have the Miami Dolphins beat the Baltimore Ravens, and that knocks Lamar down a tier. And then you have to hope that Dak has his best game in his career, probably. Talking about maybe 5 touchdowns total.
400 yards, you think? 400?
The problem with
I wouldn't say 400, but 340.
The problem with that, though, is Tua jumped ahead of Dak after the Dolphins beat us.
Yeah,
and then
I don't care about the Tua thing. Sorry to cut you off. I don't care about the Tua thing because whenever Tua hasn't had his other guys, Tyreek Hill missed a game. He didn't really look great.
Totally,
but the argument with Brock Purdy.
But the big problem with the narrative, that noise that you hear week to week, if the Dolphins beat the Ravens and Lamar drops down, then Tua is now going to be that front runner. That's all we're going to hear is Tua. Tua is the MVP. They took out the Baltimore Ravens.
It depends what kind of game he has.
Yeah,
it depends what kind of game Tua has.
I see what you're saying, Ad, and that's a good point because Lamar. I mean, it was the defense that beat the Niners.
I know, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Upfront about that. So it depends, but I will say, for Tua, he got outplayed by Dak Prescott in the game, and they still won. So it was Dak went down 17, 16 plays, went down, got the go-ahead touchdown to put his team up. You barely beat them at your house by 2. I don't think that Tua has a better argument than Dak personally because Dak has had higher highs and he hasn't had his low of lows either. And Tua also, I mean, he had a lot of fumbles lost, way more so than Dak, even though Dak got that one Lipke one tacked onto him.
Yeah. It just sucks. Dak Prescott is so far down that list right now.
Dak, though, I will say MVP beside the point right now, but I do think he's going to have his first All-Pro of his career.
Deserves it.
Which is going to go a long way because, I mean, out of all of the quarterbacks in the league, I think that it's probably going to be Josh Allen and it's going to be Dak Prescott.
Go back to AJ's looking right now at the passing grades. Go TD. So Dak Prescott has the most touchdown passes thrown. He's the only quarterback with over 3,500 yards thrown and under 10 interceptions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, right there, his stats speak for themselves right now. His stats are the front runner in my mind. Lamar Jackson has 19 touchdowns and 9 or 7 interceptions or something like that. To me, just does not scream an MVP. But he's somehow the huge favorite because
is there a way to? Sorry to cut you off, Anth. Is there a way to just look at only air yards thrown?
Yes, there is.
Because I'm interested to you think about the Dolphins' skill players like A-Chain, Mostert in the passing game as well, Tyreek Hill, Waddle. All of those guys are very fast, so they're probably getting a lot of yards after the catch as well.
A lot of yak.
I mean, you think about CD, he's our one and only yak guy, really. I guess you could say Ferguson to an extent for sure. Dak Prescott and Patrick Mahomes are probably those 2 quarterbacks that are lower on that list, especially Patty Mahomes right now because his wide receivers can't even catch the damn ball. But interested to see kind of if you can pull those stats up because I think that's a big part of if you're the most valuable player on your team because if you have a guy that's a Deebo Samuel or a Tyreek Hill or a Christian McCaffrey or what I mean, those players are so dynamic by themselves that and truthfully I'll tell you this, I don't know that a single team can have an MVP and the offensive player of the year on the same team, if that makes sense. Because
so, AJ found them. And guess who's number 1?
Tua. Go.
So he's still
number 2 is Dak though?
Yeah, Dak's 2.
Wow. Okay.
So Dak's,
no, that's air yards. So actually, that's a good thing for Tua. Then.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
He's thrown that many.
So,
okay.
So Tua had 2,500 yards of ball traveling, and Dak's right behind him.
Hey.
And Brock Purdy's top 5 there also. So that's surprising.
Gotta give it to guys.
Surprising, honestly.
Here's just a real quick look at their deep ball passing too. Tua 173 of 10 plus. Actually, let me just jump up here to 20 plus. 53 for Tua. 56 for Dak. They're pretty damn close until you get to
the
40s
and 50, and that's where Tua gets ahead of Dak there with the air yards probably because how many times is Waddle or Tyreek Hill catching a 40-yard bomb.
Yeah, well,
Right.
Tua has 7 50-yard passes.
That's crazy. That's pretty wild. Dak has one.
Who's
has
that
one.
one too?
Huh?
Well, because
to CD, I think.
no,
right?
CD was 49 yards though. So
Mm.
who would Dak's 50 plus
50-yarder.
be
Let's
to?
see if we can think of it. 50-yard. Well,
This is a good trivia question.
yeah, this
right
is
here.
a good trivia. What was the biggest pass play of the year?
I would
Cooks?
Oh my
Cooks in it.
goodness.
Was it Cooks in that big 179-yard game he had?
yeah,
It
probably.
had to have been.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
what
it
it
was.
was.
He had that.
That-
Yeah,
that's
good
what it
call,
is.
That
AJ.
huge.
He had the crossing route, caught it, and then ran up the sideline.
Yeah.
And Dak to CD was like a 10-yard throw, and then CD had 39
Right.
yak yards.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But Dak has been very good at throwing the ball in the seam. So and that holds up to my point about Dak. I just didn't expect Tua to be up there, but I guess when you have 5 yards of separation for Tyreek Hill or
Well, you got to
Jalen
think how
Waddle,
many times did Tyreek Hill have airmail catches, right? Like ones
Yeah,
that are
that's
just
true.
are right up
So,
there.
Do you think he has more
Interesting.
airmail catches on Miami than he did on the Chiefs?
I'd say close.
Probably
Ooh,
pretty close.
close.
If Dak had already won a Super Bowl in the previous years and he had this type of season, his record or his horse in the race would be far ahead of a lot of the other
Oh,
quarterbacks.
if Patrick Mahomes has identical stats to Dak Prescott right now,
Yeah,
he's the MVP,
Yeah, so exactly.
which is
so
fucked up.
so Dallas
Well,
wins.
I don't know if they still have the same record as a team though.
And
Well,
that, and
no,
that,
that's
and
a little
that's what it's all going down to right now. When we,
Yeah.
a couple weeks
But
ago, when
records
we,
for the team, Josh Allen is ahead of Dak on these people's list, and they have
that
a
they
shittier
just-
record.
because he beat Dak. I told you guys 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, before the Bills game when Dak Prescott's MVP stock was at a high. It didn't matter what he did prior. If he had to go and beat the Bills if he would have beat the Bills and the Dolphins, you pencil him in as he's in the MVP. The Cowboys lost the 2 games. Dak didn't have a great game against the Bills, had a respectable game against the Dolphins, but didn't separate. Even if he would have had a win against one of them,
Yeah.
I still think they're looking for him for those wins.
So do we need to have Dak Prescott have 2 monster games plus clinch the NFC East division title?
I don't
in
know
order
if he
for him
has
to be MVP.
he would have to have like EJ said. I think he has to have his best game as an NFL quarterback on Saturday.
The biggest thing is I think that the top record in the league right now is 4 losses. Am I correct on that?
Yep.
Or
Yeah.
does
No, the Ravens are the Ravens
3
11 and
losses?
4 also? I thought they were 12
They're
and
12
3.
and 3.
Yeah.
they're 12-3? So Cowboys would have to continue to win out. They'd only have 5 losses, and the Ravens would have to finish with at least 4 losses, in my opinion. And then that's like, okay, well, there's no like 14-2 record or 15-1s and stuff like that. So the records are pretty close, and Dak's stats are much better than Lamar's or much better versus these other guys, in my opinion, because it is so hinging upon team record for whatever reason.
Which
I
is
don't
dumb.
really-
The problem is, the team's record should come into play in that. Okay, if you're a quarterback and you have 1 win, it's going to be you would have to be playing spectacular with no one on your team for you to even be considered. Just like chances of you performing with that type of low of a record, right? So generally, you're going to get a team who is in the first or second seed for their division, and I think all of those teams are then like, okay, now we can look at all the quarterbacks here. So I think we're moving away from that and now looking more at like who's the best
Do you
player
guys-
on the team that has one of the top 3 records, instead of like, okay, of these teams who deserve a look at which player is helping the team the most. It's based way too much on you won, so now your quarterback moves up. It's like that's
It doesn't
really
make
not
sense.
how it should
And
work.
can we, while we're on this deep dive of MVP talk, can we just look at Lamar Jackson's
Stats?
2023 stats?
Yeah,
Because 19, I mean,
food for thought.
Mhm.
Sorry, Anth.
No,
Food for thought.
go for it.
Lamar just passed Kirk Cousins in passing touchdowns for the season. Kirk Cousins has been out since week 8.
he has
Exactly.
he has 19 passing
his
touchdowns.
19 passing touchdowns.
3,500 yard, 19 passing touchdowns.
I guess the 3,500 yards gives him a little bit of credence, a little
He
bit.
has 737 or 750 rushing yards with about
Still.
5 rushing touchdowns.
That still doesn't do it for me.
And his QBR outside
Mhm.
of the San Francisco game is not that great.
Who was it?
Pull
you
up
wanted
his
to look at?
turnovers.
Lamar
though. I mean,
Jackson.
Jackson, right?
if you're gonna add in the rushing stats, you have to add in all of his turnovers, and I think he has double the amount of turnovers as Dak.
No, I
less
think
touchdowns overall.
I think he's pretty. I think him and Dak have the same amount of turnovers.
No, but
Well-
fumbles. It's super strange to look at. Just AJ had the Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson stats up there for a minute, and it's weird because Dak has the 30 touchdowns, Lamar only has 19, and then if you factor in, I guess, even if you factor in the rushing,
which I was just pulling up.
but
as
that
well.
only puts him up to 24 total touchdowns. Then you also got to add into his fumbling. So I get it. I get his team's 12-3 and rolling, but that shouldn't automatically put you at the height of the MVP discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's had 11 fumbles. I mean,
How many lost does it say?
Oh, that's just lost.
That's lost
I
fumbles.
believe that's lost.
If he has 11 lost
Go
fumbles,
to
that
a
is
StatMuse.
that is
.com,
mind-boggling.
and you could type it in. Fumbles lost Lamar Jackson 2023, and it will pop up exactly.
that is, if Lamar Jackson has 11 fumble lost, that puts him up to 18 turnovers on the year. It only puts him up to 24 touchdowns. That's 24 touchdowns to 18 turnovers. That's not
Yeah.
great.
6 he's lost.
Okay, 6. So that
Okay,
makes
6.
that makes it a little less. So he's got 13 turnovers, and I mean, my biggest thing for me is the touchdowns. Like that, 24 total touchdowns.
I will still take those 11 fumbles though and mark them all because your teammates bailed you out on 5 of those, if my math's correct. And you know, if you had 1 lost fumble and 2 or 3 fumbles, okay, but like 11 fumbles, you're still giving the opportunity for the defense to get that ball.
You're holding it out there.
You're still like if your running back had 11 fumbles, you'd sticking.
If your running back had, I think Zeke his really bad year had about
Yeah.
6 lost fumbles, and it was like the
Yeah,
world
what is
was
going on?
over.
Search up turnover worthy plays on PFF. for
Oh yeah,
Lamar Jackson.
AJ loves the turnover.
I
worthies.
got that right here for
'Cause
Lamar.
I know Dak is down there on those, and I assume that Lamar is probably up there with the turnover worthy plays because I do
Dak
T-
12,
think that they
TWPs,
attribute
Dak
the
12,
fumbles.
Lamar 15.
But it's also the turnover worthy play
percent.
percent. So 1.9 to 2.6, which is quite a big jump, 0.7% jump. You know, that's 33% more than Dak.
Can
The
we
drop
just get sorry?
What
and
is the DRP drop rate?
Drop rate.
And I know we're making
Or
AJ
drops,
we're
okay.
putting AJ
Drops.
to work right now.
Yeah.
Good.
But can you just go to Lamar Jackson's like his ESPN stats? I just want to see his game stats, like each
Yep.
game. Like I want to see what his best game was. Like how many touchdowns for 19 touchdowns in a season. You're right now you're averaging
3. He had like 3.
that
has
would
been
be
his best
there's
game.
got to be a lot of games that he didn't do anything.
The only reason I know is because I was looking at it last night before we went in the 8:00 spot.
Okay, so here we go. So we're looking at his regular season here because he did miss a couple games, didn't he? He's played what 1, 2.
No, he's played all
He's
15.
played all of them.
He's played all of them. Oh, for some reason I thought he was out.
Me too. But
I thought he was out for some reason.
so where are we? I'll just look at the top here, so we got that.
3
in.
against the Rams. That was an overtime game.
And
And
then
then
So-
Detroit.
and then yeah, against the Lions.
I mean, granted, it was a walk off.
Lot of
but-
ones though. 1, 2, 3, 4,
Well,
5
3
ones
against
and a zero.
Detroit, 3 throwing touchdowns against Detroit, and 1 rushing touchdown against Detroit.
Like I look at this and I just don't see.
I wouldn't want these stats.
No, these aren't an MVP caliber person to me. They're just not.
I-
And that's why last night on the 8:00 spot, when we asked is Lamar the MVP, to me it was a no. I think right now the MVP of the NFL has been Christian McCaffrey.
Yes.
I think he's been the best player in the NFL, and I think he deserves. If you're gonna pick someone over a quarterback that has better stats than Lamar Jackson, you got to go with the running back who's been absolutely unreal.
My thing with CMC, I don't know that he's done enough on the ground by himself. Like
Really?
he has all the touchdowns, but he only has, I think, like 1,300 yards on the ground.
But
Don't
that,
quote me on that.
but yeah, no, you're right. He's almost at 1,400, but you got to factor in 2 more games. He's going to be around 1,700 plus another couple touchdowns plus his receiving. I'm just saying in comparison. I'm saying in comparison to a quarterback that has 19 touchdown passes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know,
Like
like,
19 touchdown passes. That's in Daniel Jones territory in my mind.
For reference, just going back in history, Peyton Manning won an MVP over CJ2K, which is Chris Johnson, the year that he ran for 2,000 yards, and he was great for the Titans. He won it over him with a stat line of like 30 touchdowns and 16 interceptions,
Which is awful.
and with like 14-2 record. So
Yeah.
you have to be very, 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 very good as a running back to win it over a quarterback, even just a regular statistical season.
For sure.
quarterback.
But and that's what I mean though. If they're going to give it to Lamar Jackson over any of these other quarterbacks who to me have clearly better
Yeah.
quarterback stats than Lamar Jackson. An MVP, I guess it also takes into account you elevating your team, which they're the best team in the NFL right now. They're 12-3. I don't see it. I
Well,
just
even
don't
with
see it.
his rushing touchdowns there,
He's 24 total touchdowns.
Still not up there.
So